The alarms of the medical wing echoed through the long silver halls. The doors opened and 2 alien guards carried in a broken human soldier. His body burned, his armor cracked, his blood mixing with strange black dust from the battlefield. He was breathing, but every breath sounded like thunder, heavy and painful. Every eye in the room turned to him. Because humans were rare here, humans were dangerous here, and no one wanted to be the one to touch him. The alien nurse stood near the wall, her skin a pale shade of blue, her eyes glowing faint green under the white medical lights. She was young for her kind, but already trusted with serious cases. She had treated warriors, criminals, even strange beasts from forbidden moons, but never before had she treated a human. She had only read about them in the training files that called them resilient, unpredictable, and stubborn. Files that warned never to get too close. The guards placed the human on the glowing bed, and the bed scanned his body, showing wounds across his chest, arms, and legs. The display pulsed red. The nurse stepped forward slowly, her 3 long fingers holding the scanning tool, her voice calm though her heart was racing. "Stabilize him," she ordered. The assistants obeyed, but their eyes showed fear. No one wanted to stand too close to the human, as if his very breath carried danger. She leaned over him, her nose catching the strange warm scent of human blood, thicker, sharper than the fluids of other species. She pressed the scanner down and the tool beeped with warning after warning. Organs failing, ribs broken, skin torn. She should have stepped back, reported him as too unstable, left him to fate. But something in his face stopped her. Even half dead, even burned, his eyes twitched, fighting to open, as if refusing to surrender. The nurse whispered under her breath, "So this is the strength of a human." She had heard stories, that humans survived freezing moons with no shelter, that they walked through fire when others ran, that they smiled even with death near. But now she was seeing it with her own eyes, and it sent a shiver down her spine. She adjusted the bed, preparing the deep scan. But when the lights moved down his body, the machine paused at his lower section. A flashing error appeared on the display. The nurse frowned, confused. She adjusted again and the error repeated. "Unknown structure detected," the machine said in cold voice. The assistants looked at her nervously. One whispered, "Nurse, maybe stop. Maybe call the chief," but she shook her head. Her curiosity too strong, her glowing eyes narrowed. She moved the cloth covering the human's legs, and for the first time she saw what her files had never shown. Something her kind did not have. Something that looked strange yet powerful. She froze, her hand trembling, her mind full of questions. Why would nature give them this? Why so different, why so alive, she thought, her chest tight with shock. The assistant gasped and stepped back. "What is that?" he whispered, fear dripping in his voice. The nurse did not answer. Her lips pressed together. She could not explain. She could not even understand, but she felt something deep. A realization that humans were not only different, they were carrying something more. Something that made the galaxy fear them and yet need them. The human groaned, his eyes fluttering open for a moment. His gaze met hers, weak but steady. His lips curved in the faintest of smiles, as if he knew what she had seen. As if he had caught her surprise. She froze again, unable to look away, her alien heart beating faster than ever before. The room seemed silent, though alarms still echoed outside. The moment felt longer than it was, her world shifting by just looking at him. She quickly pulled the cloth back, covering him, her hands shaking though she forced her face to remain calm. She barked orders at the assistants. "Begin healing cycle. Prepare plasma injectors. Increase oxygen." Her voice steady now, hiding the storm inside. She could not let others see what she had seen. She could not let them know how shaken she was. Humans were supposed to be just patients. Dangerous patients, nothing more, but deep inside. She knew it was not nothing. She knew that what she had just witnessed was the beginning of something she could not stop. Something that would change her life. Maybe even the life of her people. She turned away for a moment, gathering her breath, her thoughts racing. If this secret spreads, the galaxy will never look at humans the same way, she thought. Her glowing eyes narrowing again, but then she looked back at him, his chest rising, his body fighting to live, and she felt the pull of curiosity stronger than ever. The guards outside shouted orders. Footsteps echoed. More injured soldiers being rushed into other rooms, but the nurse stayed near her human patient, her long fingers tightening on the scanner. Her heart heavy with questions, her mind full of fear, yet also something else. Something she had never felt before, a strange spark of connection. She leaned closer, whispering so only he could hear, though he was barely conscious. "What are you, human?" her voice soft, almost trembling. "What are you hiding inside you?" The human's lips moved, no clear words, just a broken breath. But his faint smile remained. A smile that told her he knew. A smile that told her the answer would not be simple. A smile that would haunt her long after this moment. The lights dimmed. The machines continued their work, and the nurse stood frozen, staring at her patient, knowing one thing for certain: this was not the end. This was only the beginning. The alien nurse could not sleep that cycle. Her glowing eyes stared at the ceiling of her small chamber. The images of the human on her medical bed replayed again and again. She had treated broken bones, shattered organs, even venom-burned bodies before. But nothing had shaken her like this. Nothing had made her heart beat fast with both fear and curiosity. She felt like she had looked into a forbidden book and read a line no one else dared to read. Her people had rules, and the rules were strict. Never get too close to a human. Never touch them more than needed. Never study them outside the official files. But rules always made her restless. She had joined the medical division not just to heal but to understand life itself. She wanted to know why species were different, why nature shaped them the way it did. And now, with one human lying in her care, she had the chance to answer questions no one wanted to ask. She returned to the medical wing early, before the other staff arrived. The corridors silent, the lights dim, the hum of machines the only sound. Her patient still lay on the glowing bed, his chest rising slowly, his body fighting, his skin pale yet alive. She placed her long fingers on the control board, and the deep records of human biology appeared in floating symbols before her eyes. The files were cold and simple. They described humans as adaptable, strong in chaos, dangerous when pushed, their history full of wars and survival against impossible odds. But the files were also incomplete. She knew that now. They avoided details. They avoided the things she had seen. She whispered to herself, "Why hide this? Why leave out such truth?" Her fingers tapping quickly, searching deeper in the system. But the files blocked her. Permissions denied. Knowledge locked away. She leaned back, her chest tight with frustration. Her people feared humans so much they even erased the details. And yet how could she stop thinking about it? She remembered the moment she had pulled the cloth, the strange design of the human body. Powerful, alive, different from every other species she had studied. She felt a strange heat inside, not just curiosity now, but a quiet sense that this difference was the reason behind everything, the reason humans were so unpredictable, so unstoppable. The door hissed open, and an older alien doctor stepped inside, his skin darker, his eyes harder, his voice sharp. "You are here early, nurse," he said, his gaze drifting to the human on the bed, then back to her. "You should not be alone with it." His words cold, as if the human was not even a person, just an object. She lowered her head slightly, hiding her true thoughts. "I was only checking his vitals." "Doctor," she answered calmly. The older doctor stepped closer, his hands behind his back. "Remember what you were taught. Humans are not to be trusted. They will smile at you and then stab you. They will beg for help and then burn your home. Keep your distance," his tone final, leaving no space for questions. He looked once more at the human's face, then turned and left, his footsteps heavy, his warning clear. But as soon as he left, the nurse turned back to the patient, her lips tightening. She thought, if they are so afraid of him even when he is broken and weak, then maybe the truth is not that humans are dangerous. Maybe the truth is that humans carry something powerful they want to keep hidden. She leaned closer to the bed, and for a moment the human's eyes opened again, just a flicker. His lips moved, a whisper too soft for machines to record, but her sharp alien ears caught it. One word. "Why?" he breathed. Before slipping back into unconsciousness, the nurse froze, her body stiff. Did he hear her? Did he know she was searching for answers? The word stayed with her, heavy and mysterious. She checked the monitors, but her hands trembled slightly. She told herself it was just coincidence, a random sound from a weak body. Yet deep inside she knew it was not. Deep inside she felt the human was aware, even in his broken state, aware of her curiosity, aware of her watching. Later that cycle, the medical wing filled with staff, alien doctors and assistants, their voices sharp, their movements quick. More patients arrived from the battlefield. But still, eyes kept glancing toward the human bed. Whispers carried across the hall. Why is it still alive? Why are we wasting resources on it? What if it wakes up? The nurse heard every word, and each whisper made her grip the tools tighter. Made her resolve stronger, she thought. They all fear him, but none of them truly know him. None of them have seen what I have seen. As night fell again, she returned once more to the human's side. The lights dim, the room quiet. She sat near him, her long arms folded. Watching his chest rise and fall, she whispered softly, "I should not be here, I should not care. But I cannot stop." Her voice almost breaking. "Why do you carry such mystery, human? What is hidden inside you?" She did not know that behind closed doors. Others were already watching her. Security records tracking her visits. Higher officers noting her unusual behavior. Warnings ready to be given. Punishment waiting if she crossed the line. But the nurse could not feel their eyes. She was too focused on the man before her, too deep in the forbidden discovery she had already begun. The hum of the machines filled the silence. The human's faint breath answered her questions without words. And in that moment, the nurse realized something she could not ignore. Something dangerous, something final. She was no longer just his healer. She was becoming his guardian, and soon, she might even be his ally. The medical wing was silent when the human finally stirred. The night cycle had turned the bright corridors dim. The other patients were asleep or sedated, and only the hum of life support machines filled the air. The alien nurse sat by his bed, her glowing eyes half closed from exhaustion. When she heard the faint sound, a soft groan, a chest rising with more force, a whisper of breath that carried weight, she leaned forward, her long fingers tightening on the edge of the bed. The human's face twitched, his eyelids fluttered, and slowly, painfully, his eyes opened, deep and dark compared to her glowing ones. They searched the room, confused, lost, then locked onto her. The nurse froze, her chest tightening. She had expected this moment, but not the way it happened. His gaze was not weak, it was sharp, alive. Even when his body was broken, the human tried to move. But pain shot through him, his muscles stiff. His ribs cracked, he gasped, his lips pulling into a crooked grin. A strange thing, even in pain, he smiled. The nurse blinked, confused. Her voice calm yet trembling. "Do not move. Your body is not ready," she warned, her alien accent wrapping around the human words she had practiced from her files. But the man only gave a soft laugh, dry and cracked. "Still alive then?" he whispered, his voice rough like stone. "Guess you people didn't finish the job." The nurse tilted her head. Her species rarely showed emotion, but inside her heart raced. He was not afraid. He was not begging. He was not confused like most patients waking after near death. Instead, he was calm, mocking even, and that made her uneasy. She answered slowly, "You are in recovery. I saved you," her tone firm. But the human's eyes narrowed slightly. "Saved me, huh? Or just keeping me alive until you decide what to do?" The words cut deep. Not because they were cruel, but because they were too close to truth. Her people did not value humans. They kept them alive only if useful, and she knew if her superiors ordered it, his life could be ended in a second. She stayed silent, watching him, unsure how much to reveal, unsure if she should tell him she was curious, that she had already broken rules by studying him. The human coughed, a harsh sound, and she rushed to steady him, her long fingers pressing gently against his chest. His breath steadied, his eyes locked on her again, this time softer, less sharp. "You're not like the others," he said quietly. "The guards, the doctors, they look at me like I'm poison, but you—" He paused, studying her glowing eyes. "You look at me like you want answers." The nurse stiffened, her mind racing. How could he know? How could he sense the storm inside her? She pulled her hand back quickly, masking her emotions. "I only do my duty," she replied. But her voice betrayed her. A faint tremor he did not miss. His cracked smile widened. "Duty, sure, if that helps you sleep at night." For a long moment, silence filled the room. Only the steady hum of the machines, only the quiet beat of two very different hearts. The nurse finally broke the silence, asking carefully, "Why do you humans always smile? Even when dying?" Her voice carried genuine curiosity, the question slipping out before she could stop it. The human chuckled softly, wincing at the pain. "Because if we stop smiling, the universe wins." The answer hit her like a strike, so simple, so direct, yet it carried a weight her people would never understand. They faced problems with calculation, with logic, but humans faced them with something else, something stubborn, something alive. She lowered her gaze, her long fingers tightening on the tool she held. Her thoughts tangled. No file ever said this. No file explained it this way. Before she could ask more, the doors hissed open. Two alien officers entered, their armor black, their voices sharp. Status of the human? One demanded, their glowing eyes scanning the bed like hunters. The nurse stepped forward quickly, her voice calm, stabilized, still weak. Not a threat. The officers exchanged a glance. One muttered, "Not yet," and they left. But not before giving her a long look, a warning hidden in silence. The human had watched it all, his eyes narrowing, his voice a whisper. "They don't plan to keep me alive." "Do they?" The nurse turned to him, her face blank, but her silence was louder than words. He gave another faint grin, though his eyes darkened. "Figures. Never easy with aliens," he murmured, closing his eyes briefly, saving his strength. She stood there, feeling torn. Her duty was to heal, but now healing felt like rebellion. Protecting him felt like betrayal to her people, yet she could not stop. She remembered his earlier words. "You want answers?" And she knew he was right. She wanted to know why he fought to live, why he smiled at pain, why his body carried secrets the galaxy feared to admit. As the cycle ended, she dimmed the lights, letting him rest, but she stayed near, watching, listening to his breath, the faint rise and fall of his chest, and in her mind, questions grew louder, questions no training had prepared her for. And when the human, half asleep, whispered softly into the quiet room, "Don't leave me," her heart clenched, her glowing eyes softened, and she whispered back before she could stop herself, "I will not." The machines hummed on, the night stretched long, and the bond between nurse and patient, alien and human, had just begun to form. A bond that would not be broken easily, a bond that might one day change everything. The human slept through most of the next cycle, his body still weak, his wounds still deep, but the alien nurse never left his side. She sat near him, checking the machines, adjusting the healing fluids, watching his chest rise and fall, sometimes steady, sometimes sharp. She should have felt calm, but instead her heart carried a storm, because she knew the danger was no longer just inside his body. The danger was outside, in the whispers that grew louder each hour. The medical wing was not silent anymore. Rumors spread through the staff like sparks in dry air. Assistants talked when they thought no one was listening. Guards muttered when they passed the door. "The nurse is too close," one said. "She spends too much time with the human," another whispered. "Why does she sit with him when she should be helping others?" Their voices carried suspicion, and suspicion in this place was poison. She pretended not to hear, but her long ears caught every word. Her glowing eyes lowered each time she walked through the hall. The others no longer looked at her as one of them. They looked at her as if she was infected, touched by something dangerous, touched by him. She tried to focus on her duty, but duty now felt like betrayal. Betrayal to her people if she saved him. Betrayal to herself if she let him die that evening. The chief doctor entered, his tall frame casting a shadow across the room. His skin darker than hers, his eyes sharp like blades, his voice low but heavy. "Nurse, you have been reported," he said, his words slow, measured. "They say you stay here longer than necessary. They say you protect the human more than the rest." She kept her head low, her hands folded. "I do only what is required." "Nothing more," she answered, her tone calm, but inside her chest pounded. The chief stepped closer, his gaze falling on the man in the bed. "Humans are not like us. They twist the hearts of those who get too near. They use weakness as a weapon," he said coldly. "Remember your oath. Remember where your loyalty lies." Then he turned, his long steps echoing out of the room, his warning heavy in the air. The nurse stood frozen for a moment, her glowing eyes on the floor. She knew he was right about one thing. Her loyalty was shifting. Not to the council, not to her own people, but to the human who lay in the bed. Breathing, fighting, refusing to let go, she clenched her fingers, whispering to herself, "Why am I doing this? Why can't I let go?" But she already knew the answer. She had seen something in him that no report, no file, no warning had ever prepared her for. Later, when the medical wing grew quiet again, the human opened his eyes, weak but aware. He looked at her, his voice rough but steady. "They don't trust you anymore." "Do they?" She stiffened, surprised by his words, but she did not deny it. He gave a faint grin, that same stubborn grin she had begun to know. "Good. Maybe that means you're finally seeing what they fear." She sat near him, her voice low. "You should not speak. Your strength is not back," but he shook his head, his lips curling. "Strength isn't only in muscles, it's in choice. And you've already made yours." Her chest tightened, because his words were too close to truth. She whispered back, "Do not speak like that." Someone could hear. But she realized too late she had leaned closer, almost protective, almost desperate. Footsteps echoed outside. She quickly pulled away, standing tall as the guards passed the door, their glowing helmets turning briefly toward the room. Then fading down the hall, she exhaled slowly, her body trembling. The human smirked weakly. "See, even your people think we're plotting something." She wanted to deny it, but her silence gave him the answer. She was hiding something even from herself, and the bond between them was no longer just patient and healer. It was becoming something forbidden, something dangerous. The following cycle, 2 assistants were caught whispering again, one saying, "If she keeps protecting him, we should report her to the council," the other nodding. "She will lose her post, maybe even worse," the nurse overheard. Her blood cold, she walked past them without a word, but in her mind, she felt the ground shaking. She was already walking a thin line, and the line was about to break. That night, when the human drifted into restless sleep, she stood near his bed. Her glowing eyes fixed on him, she whispered softly, words she had never dared say before. "I will not let them take you, even if it means I stand against my own." Her voice trembled, but her resolve hardened. She knew the path ahead was not safe, but the choice had already been made in her heart, as if in answer. The human stirred half asleep, his lips parting, a broken murmur escaping. "Don't let them." His voice trailing, but his meaning clear. She reached out, her long fingers brushing his arm lightly, a gesture she had never done before. Her people did not believe in touch, but she did it anyway, because in that moment, she was no longer just his nurse, she was his shield far above. In the council chambers, orders were already shifting, whispers turning into decisions. Soon the human would be moved, examined or worse, but down here in the ward, in the quiet shadows of the medical wing, a secret was growing, a bond too strong to be denied, and as the nurse stood guard over her patient, she realized the truth that terrified her more than any threat outside. She was no longer afraid of him. She was afraid of losing him. The medical wing grew quieter with each passing cycle, but inside the nurse's chamber, silence was impossible. Her thoughts screamed even when her mouth stayed shut. She could no longer deny the truth. She was changing, and the reason was the human lying on her bed. At first, she had only studied him out of duty, then curiosity. But now she sat near him for reasons she could not name. She wanted to hear his voice, to watch his strange eyes open, to see how his lips curved into that stubborn grin even when pain pressed against him. She told herself it was foolish, but her heart did not listen. That evening, the human stirred awake again, his chest rising with more strength than before, his voice rough but steady. "Still here, nurse?" he asked, his dark eyes meeting her glowing ones. She nodded calmly, though her chest tightened. "Yes, I am here," she answered, her tone quiet, controlled. But inside she felt something heavier than duty. He gave a faint chuckle, though it hurt him. "You must like me," he teased, the words soft but dangerous. Her species did not understand teasing, but she had heard it before in his stories. She frowned, confused yet curious. "Like?" she repeated, tilting her head. His smile widened despite the pain. "You'll learn," he whispered. She studied him carefully, then asked what had been pressing on her mind for many cycles. Why do humans always hide fear behind smiles? Why not show weakness? Why not accept it? Her glowing eyes narrowed, searching his face for truth. He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again, his gaze sharper than before. "Because weakness invites chains, and humans don't wear chains for long." The nurse froze, the weight of those words sinking into her chest. Her people valued obedience, silence, order. But here was a man who rejected all of it even while half dead. And still he smiled, still he fought, she whispered almost to herself. "You are dangerous not because of your weapons, but because of your will." He turned his head slightly, his eyes meeting hers again. "And you? You don't look at me like I'm an enemy. You look at me like you want to understand." His words cut deeper than any wound. She felt her cheeks flush, though her kind rarely showed such changes. She turned away, hiding the storm in her chest. The cycles passed and their conversations grew longer. She asked him about Earth, about the blue oceans he described, the forests that never ended, the stars humans dared to chase even when no one else would. He spoke of war too, of mistakes, of survival, but also of laughter, of families, of a world that sounded more alive than any file could describe. In return, she told him about her people, how they built order from silence, how they feared chaos more than death, how emotions were buried under duty, but as she spoke, she realized she was breaking that rule already, because she was feeling, truly feeling, and it terrified her one night. After a long pause in their talk, he whispered softly, You're not like them, are you? The others look at me like I'm a monster, but you look at me like I'm human. Her chest tightened at the word. She lowered her gaze, whispering back. And you look at me like I am more than a nurse, her voice trembled. But the words came anyway. Words she could never take back. Their bond deepened, quiet but undeniable. And soon others began to notice. Whispers turned into questions. Questions turned into warnings. One assistant told her sharply, "Stop speaking to it, stop protecting it, or you will lose everything." But she ignored him, because every time the human spoke, every time he smiled through the pain, she felt herself stepping further away from her people and closer to him. Danger grew as well one evening. Orders arrived from above. The human was to be transferred. Examined by higher command, she read the message in silence, her glowing eyes narrowing, her long fingers trembling. She knew what examination meant. It meant dissection, it meant death. She looked at him asleep, his chest rising slowly, unaware of the doom written in cold letters on her screen. Her heart pounded, her mind raced, and in that moment she made her choice, a choice that would mark her forever. She deleted the order from the system, erasing it, hiding it, breaking every oath she had sworn. When he woke, weak but alive, she sat by his side. Her face calm, though her heart was fire. He looked at her, sensing something had changed. "What happened?" he asked softly. She shook her head, whispering, "Nothing you need to fear tonight." But her glowing eyes told another story. A story of rebellion, of defiance, of a bond no council could break. For the first time, she touched his hand, her long fingers wrapping gently around his rough skin. Her people never touched unless required. But this was no medical gesture. It was something else, something forbidden. His eyes widened slightly, then softened, his fingers tightening back, a silent promise passing between them in that moment. The nurse knew she was no longer only his healer. She was his protector, his ally, and maybe even his friend, but she also knew the cost. Her people would call her traitor. Her superiors would call her corrupt, and the galaxy would call her reckless. Yet none of that mattered anymore, because as she held his hand, she realized the truth she had been running from. She was no longer afraid of losing her position, her honor, or even her life. She was only afraid of losing him. The human's strength grew with each cycle, his body healing faster than the nurse expected, his stubborn willpower refusing to let the injuries win. But with every breath he regained, the shadow of danger grew thicker around them. The whispers in the ward had become louder. Assistants no longer hid their suspicion. Guards lingered longer outside the door. Even the chief doctor's visits grew more frequent, his glowing eyes sharp whenever they fell on her and her patient. The nurse felt the trap closing, step by step, but she did not move away. She stayed near the human, her resolve hardening. Then, one silent night, the alarm shattered the calm. Red lights flashed across the medical wing. Sirens howled through the corridors. Doors sealed, voices shouted outside. "Enemy forces. Breach detected." The nurse froze for a moment, her long fingers clutching the bed rail. The human pushed himself up weakly, his face pale but his eyes alert. "That sound," he said, his voice rough but steady. "That's not a drill." The walls trembled as distant blasts shook the ground. The nurse rushed to the panel, checking the scanners. The symbols glowed in warning. Unidentified crafts had broken through the perimeter. Hostile forces were entering, and their target was clear: the human. Her chest tightened, she turned to him, her voice low but urgent. "They are coming for you." He gave a tired laugh, coughing through the pain. "Of course they are. Seems I'm always someone's target," but his eyes narrowed. "Serious now. You need to let me go, nurse. If they find me here, you'll be punished too." She shook her head fiercely, her glowing eyes blazing in the dim light. "No, I will not leave you. I promised." He stared at her for a long moment, then gave a faint smile. "You're stubborn, almost like a human." The door outside hissed. Footsteps pounded closer, heavy and fast. She had no weapon, no training in combat, but her mind raced. She looked around the room, her eyes landing on the equipment. Medical tools, energy injectors, plasma cutters, things meant to heal but sharp enough to harm. She grabbed one, the device humming faintly in her hand, her alien fingers shaking but firm. The human struggled to sit up, sweat running down his forehead. He reached toward the table, grabbing a small injector, his grip weak but determined. "If they want to fight, we'll give them one," he muttered, his voice like stone. The nurse wanted to stop him, but she saw the fire in his eyes, the fire she had seen since the first moment, and she knew there was no stopping him. The door burst open. Armored intruders stormed in. their bodies heavy with black suits, their glowing visors scanning the room. One pointed at the bed, his voice mechanical. The human is priority. Secure and extract, another raised his weapon, aiming. The nurse stepped forward before she could think. Her long arm raised, the plasma cutter flashing, a beam of hot light slicing through the air, striking the weapon and sending sparks across the floor. The intruders staggered back for a moment, surprised, not expecting resistance from a healer. The human used that chance, his weak hand jabbing the injector into the nearest intruder's neck. The alien screamed, collapsing, his armor clattering against the floor. The nurse's heart raced. Her mind screamed at her, "What am I doing? I am breaking every law," but her body did not stop. She swung the cutter again, her glowing eyes burning with defiance. The fight spread through the ward, alarms louder now. Guards from her own people rushing toward the sound, not to help her, but to restrain, to take control. She knew it. She could feel it. The enemy was not only the intruders, it was also the ones above who wanted the human silenced. She grabbed his arm, pulling him from the bed, his legs shaky but moving. "We must go," she urged, his breath heavy. His face pale, but he nodded. "Then lead the way." They ran through the corridor, the ground shaking from explosions outside. Shadows of soldiers closing in from both ends. She dragged him into a side passage, her glowing fingers tapping on hidden panels. She knew the medical wing better than anyone. She knew the blind corners, the unused tunnels, the places security had long forgotten. The human stumbled, nearly falling. She caught him, holding his weight with surprising strength. "Don't stop," she whispered, her voice trembling. "If they catch you, they will end you." He gave her a grin even as blood dripped from his lip. "Then I guess we better not get caught." Their breaths echoed as they moved deeper into the passage. Behind them the sound of pursuit grew louder. Boots striking metal, weapons charging, voices barking orders. "Seal the exits. Do not let them escape." The nurse's heart thundered, every step felt heavier. But her grip on his arm never loosened. She whispered to herself, "I should be afraid, but I am not. I should be loyal to my people, but I am not. I only know one truth now, I must keep him alive." They reached a hidden door, old and half-broken. She pressed her hand against the scanner. The panel buzzed, denying access. She tried again. The lights flickered. The voices behind them grew closer. The human placed his hand on top of hers, his voice steady despite his pain. "We'll make it. Trust me." The lock gave way with a sharp click, the door sliding open, revealing a dark service tunnel. She pulled him inside just as the enemy stormed into the corridor behind them, their weapons firing, beams of energy slicing the air where they had stood a second before. The door sealed, plunging them into darkness, only the faint glow of her eyes lighting the tunnel. She looked at him, his chest heaving, his face pale, but his grin still there, faint but real. She whispered, "We are not safe yet." He nodded, whispering back, "Doesn't matter. We're free for now." And in that moment, in the darkness, she realized the truth she had feared all along. She was no longer just saving him. She was fighting beside him, against enemies outside and inside, against her own people if needed. The threat was revealed, but so was her choice. She had chosen the human. The service tunnel stretched into darkness, the air heavy with dust, the hum of machines echoing faintly from far below. The alien nurse guided the human through the narrow path, her glowing eyes lighting the way, his steps unsteady, his body still weak, but his spirit unbroken. Every breath a battle, every step a victory. Behind them, the sound of pursuit still echoed, armored boots striking metal, weapons charging, voices demanding their capture. Yet the nurse felt no hesitation now. The choice had already been made. She would not let them take him. She would not let them erase the truth she had seen in his eyes. They reached an old junction where the tunnel split. Broken signs flickered, warning of disuse. She stopped, listening, her long fingers tightening around his arm. "We must decide," she whispered. "Left leads to the lower docks. Right leads to the reactor halls." The human leaned against the wall, his chest heaving, then he gave her that stubborn grin again. "Whichever way gets us killed slower." She stared at him, shocked, then realized he was joking. Even now, even here, with death breathing down their necks. He joked. Her chest tightened, part fear, part awe.
"How can you smile at this moment?" she asked.
Her voice trembling. He looked at her, eyes sharp but kind. "Because fear doesn't help us run faster. And if this is the end, I'd rather laugh than cry." She felt the weight of his words. The strange human philosophy that Files had never described. Strength not only in weapons or survival but in spirit, in laughter, in mercy. She nodded slowly, then pulled him to the right. Reactor halls, she decided. The guards will not expect us there. The tunnel opened into a massive chamber, glowing rods of energy stretching into the distance, the hum of power vibrating through the air. The nurse guided him along the platform, her ears twitching at every sound, but before they could reach the far end, shadows appeared, armored figures stepping out from the glow. Weapons raised, the intruders had found them, and behind them more of her own people arrived. Guards in silver armor, faces hard, eyes glowing with cold order, caught between enemies and allies turned hunters. There was no escape. The nurse pushed the human behind her, raising the plasma cutter she still held, her glowing eyes blazing. "Stay back," she shouted, her voice sharp. The guards laughed bitterly. "You betray your kind for this creature?" one snarled. The intruders aimed their weapons. Ready to fire, the human stepped forward weakly, placing a hand on her shoulder, his voice rough but steady. "No, this isn't your fight alone," he whispered. She turned to him, eyes wide. "You cannot stand against them," she pleaded. But he shook his head, his grin faint but real. "Watch me." The guards advanced. "Weapons ready?" The nurse raised hers, but before she could strike, the human staggered forward, arms spread wide, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Stop!" For a moment, everyone froze, confused. The nurse's breath caught, the intruders hesitated. Even the guards tilted their heads. The human's voice carried no fear, only fire. "You want me? Then take me, but leave her." His dark eyes burned as he stared at them. "She is guilty of nothing but mercy," the words echoed. Bouncing off the reactor walls, the nurse's chest tightened painfully, her glowing eyes wide with shock. "He is protecting me," she thought, "even when he is the one they want, even when he is the one dying." The intruders laughed, but uneasily one muttered, "Strange creature, even near death. He defies us." The guards remained silent, their weapons still raised, but something had shifted in the air. The nurse could not stay silent. She stepped forward, her voice strong. "No, he is not strange, he is human, and that is why you fear him. Because he carries something none of us do. Something you cannot cage. Something you cannot kill." Her glowing eyes blazed brighter than ever. "And that is why I stand with him." The chamber trembled as if the reactor itself answered. The enemies raised their weapons, but hesitation flickered in their movements. Some stepped back, uncertain. The human's chest rose and fell, his body trembling, yet he smiled at her. That same impossible grin, and whispered, "Now you see?" The nurse felt the truth settle inside her like fire. It was not the weapon in his hand or the strength in his muscles that made humans feared. It was this: the courage to stand, the loyalty to protect, the mercy to give even when death was near. The first shot rang out, a beam of energy slicing the air. The nurse raised her cutter, deflecting, sparks flying. The human grabbed a fallen weapon with his weak hand, firing back with desperate strength. Chaos exploded in the chamber. Light and sound clashing, enemies falling, allies confused. The nurse and human fighting back to back. Minutes felt like hours, the battle fierce. But at last the intruders fell. Retreating into the shadows, the guards hesitated, their leader lowering his weapon slowly, his eyes on the human, then on the nurse. "You both should be dead," he muttered, but his tone carried no victory, only unease. The nurse held her breath, waiting for judgment, but instead the guards withdrew, silent, leaving them standing in the broken chamber. Wounded but alive, the human dropped the weapon, his body trembling, his knees almost giving out. She caught him, holding his weight, her long fingers pressing against his chest. "Why?" she whispered, tears she had never known before burning in her glowing eyes. "Why risk yourself for me?" He looked at her, his dark eyes soft now, his voice faint. "Because that's what humans do. We protect those who stand with us." His smile flickered one last time before his eyes closed. She held him tightly, her chest heaving. Her world changed forever. She whispered back into the silence, "Now I understand. Now I see why they fear you, and why they should also trust you." The alarms faded, the chamber dimmed, and in that quiet, one truth remained unshaken. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again, because one nurse had seen humanity's proof, and it was more powerful than any weapon.